In the old mystical writings are numerous references to the origins and substance of mind. The following brief statements are representative of the opinions of the ancient initiated philosophers, both Eastern and Western. Man is a very complex creature, and the knowledge of his parts and mysteries can come only as the result of a lifetime of study and investigation, but the thing gained is well worth the time that is spent in securing the information. Man, know thyself was the great motto of the ancient philosophers, and in this day of confusion it is especially necessary to understand the occult construction of not only the human body, but the invisible bodies which lie behind the physical. It has been said that man's physical body is only a tail-end appendage of consciousness. This is very true. If, therefore, a person is willing to spend many years in the study of bones and muscles, how much longer must he labor to gain an understanding of his divine nature? The higher octaves of thought. Many great philosophers have studied the faculties of the human mind. They have realized that an individual is what his thoughts are. They have realized also that thinking is the result of the combinations of centers of thought in the mental body of man, and that individuality and the existing differences of mental outlook are the results of the thousands of combinations that can be made by grouping the 43 faculties of the human mind into various geometric patterns. We divide these faculties into 7 groups and list them as they have been studied for years. Amativeness. This is generally called love, but true love is higher than the physical world and belongs to the spiritual worlds. Sexuality, the sexual instinct, the desire to reproduce kind. This is the most primitive instinct of the human mind and is the first that savage human creatures cultivated. Philoprogenitiveness. This includes the love of children, pets, and relatives. We find many persons who love their own children because they belong to them, but who are thoughtless of others not attached by the bond of relationship. Friendship. This is the supreme bond. Friendship is the one and only true relationship. Without friendship, all relations fail, and with it, all other bonds are glorified. True friendship is priceless, but it is seldom found in this civilization, where selfishness is destroying nearly all the finer sentiments. Inhabitiveness. This manifests as love of places that are made dear by memories, love of home and places we remember from childhood, love of country and a desire to defend the home and the country. Continuity. This is the ability to stick at a thing until it has been completed. It is the least developed faculty in the Western world. We start 1,000 things, but we complete very few of the things begun. Vitativeness. This function measures the hold on life. When this faculty is strong, an individual can almost eat nails with impunity, but if it is weak, the life will be short in spite of the greatest care. Executiveness. This is the power of rulership. This faculty leads and controls those who have it less developed. It often adds a hardness to the nature. Alimentiveness. This center in the mind controls the love of food, drink, and the comfortable things of life. Acquisitiveness. This area tends to make the miser. It hoards up and seeks to accumulate. It loves to amass for the sheer love of amassing. Secretiveness. The love of hiding away. Sometimes this mental trend results in persons becoming hermits and recluses. Caution, a saturnine timidity, an unwillingness to take chances. In its best form, this faculty gives prudence. If overdeveloped, it results in failure for lack of initiative. Approbativeness. When this area is well developed, it gives a desire to be popular. It turns the attention to dress, neatness of person, love of jewelry, and trinkets for self-adornment. Self-esteem. The best side of this faculty gives trust and faith in the integrity of self. It places self above conditions and environments. In its perversion, it becomes egotism, the worst enemy that a human soul can invoke out of its own nature. Firmness, fixedness of purpose. This faculty gives balance and stability. If overdeveloped, it may result in dictatorialism and intolerance. Justice. This is the area of integrity. It gives honesty and a sense of duty to others. It may also produce those who worship the letter of the law and crucify the spirit of the law. Hope. The innate realization of ultimate accomplishment, the belief that tomorrow holds the fulfillment of the dreams of today. Faith, the firm belief in the reality of things unseen, conviction that all things work together for good, a belief in law and justice in nature, a trust in providence. Veneration, the religious sense, a feeling of awe for those who are exalted or ancient, the willingness to serve those in either spiritual or temporal power, the love of ancient things. Benevolence, the desire to do good, to serve or assist others, the sense of charity, kindliness of attitude, the desire to distribute one's possessions among the needy. Imitation, the power to copy or reproduce existing things. Table manners and the cut of clothes conforming with that which is being done by others are the result of the imitative faculty. Sympathy, this is the faculty of understanding others and trying to aid them through the hard places of life. True sympathy is impossible without a deep understanding of life and its many complex problems. Suavity, the faculty of presenting the most pleasant side of the nature to the world, the culture of a charming personality, which may hide the most sinister of motives. Individuality. Physically, this center is located between the eyes above the root of the nose, and it governs the general viewpoint on life. The larger the faculty, the more powerful the individual viewpoint. The growth of this faculty separates the eyes, and the width between the eyes reveals the age of the soul in evolution. Form, the ability to note, quickly and accurately, the shape of an object, also to note, almost intuitively, deformity in an object. Size, the ability to measure the mass of a thing. It is also the faculty which makes it possible to estimate the distance from one place to another. Weight, the ability to estimate the density of an object, to measure the power that gravity will exert over it. Color, the ability to differentiate colors, shades, and tones. It is very difficult for some people to tell the shades of colors. As an example, we call your attention to carmine red, rose red, vermilion red, scarlet, to cochineal carmine, madder carmine, burnt carmine. These shades and tones can be finely distinguished only where color faculty is highly developed. Order, this is the faculty that systematizes the functions of life. It establishes chains of sequences and gives neatness to the habits of the individual. Number, the power to count and calculate, to arrange figures, and to master mathematics easily is given by a strong development of this faculty. Motion, the ability to judge the rate of motion of an object, or the desire to travel, dance, ride, or move about. This faculty gives the wanderlust. Experience, this faculty stores up mental impressions from the past and is the historian of the human mind. It also brings forth its information when needed as a guide to future activity. Locality, it is often said that people have bumps of locality, or the ability to orientate themselves easily. In strange places, they can find their way about with ease and certainty, while others can get lost in their own backyards. Time, the ability to measure accurately the lapses of time between incidents. Many people have not a sense of promptness or interval. You know the lady who drops in for 5 minutes and stays all day. There are millions like her in America. Tune, the ability to recognize harmony and discord in the combinations of sounds, either in music or speaking. Many who are unable to carry a tune love music. Others, naturally very musical, cannot learn to combine chords scientifically. Constructiveness, that faculty which gives love of combining and arranging parts of a thing into the complete whole. Some inventive power comes with this faculty. Language, the ability to express oneself adequately, includes vocabulary, the control of words, and the ability to command them. Ease and fluency in expression come from this area. Causality, the ability to estimate the invisible or unconsidered cause, which must lie behind each visible effect, the ability to understand the law of action and reaction in the mental world. Comparison, the faculty of weighing one thing against another in order to come to an estimate concerning its value or magnitude. Ideality, the love and recognition of the beautiful and refined, the desire to perfect self, the picturing of ultimate condition. Sublimity, appreciation for the great, the massive, the magnificent. Mirthfulness, the sense of humor, one of man's greatest friends. Besides the 43 faculties, 3 other things must be considered in judging the mental equipment of the individual. The function of a faculty may be modified or changed by the size of the body, the organic quality of the body, the temperament of the individual, physical strength predominating, the vital temperament, courage and ambition predominating, the mental temperament, thought and philosophy predominating. The individual outlook which every person has upon life is the result of the different combinations of these faculties and temperaments. There is no end to the combinations that can be made. The difference in people is largely the difference in outlook and faculty growth. We should look upon these centers as we look upon the keys of a piano. By combining the notes, we make an infinite number of tones and harmonies. As the result of combining certain of these centers in geometric pattern, the character of an individual is the harmony played out by the process of thought. The solar man, the spirit of the solar system, is the one whom we call God. He has 7 bodies, which we call the planes of nature. Every human creature has 7 bodies also, and these connect him with the 7 bodies of the solar man. Man's physical body is part of the physical body of nature, and the physical body of nature is the physical. Each of the bodies of man functions in the world composed of the substances out of which the body itself is formed. Man, in order to be conscious in these worlds, must evolve each of these bodies so that they will support his conscious function in their respective worlds. For example, we realize the physical body is subject to the laws of the physical world. One of the chief of these laws is gravitation. The physical body can never function anywhere except in the physical world. The consciousness of the individual may be awake in the invisible spheres and may travel in the higher worlds, but its physical body must always be left behind. The chronicles of the life of every individual are recorded and preserved in what are called the seed atoms. These are the 4 centers of force, around which are built the 4 vehicles of man. Man's 4 bodies are the physical, the vital, the emotional, the mental. Each of these has its own seed atom. Most people think of the seed atoms as tiny granules, but in reality they are vortices of force, twisting, spinning, and whirling. Each of these vortices forms a nucleus around which the four bodies of man are built as he comes into physical incarnation. Each of these seed atoms has a peculiar faculty, which is not that of memory, but that of preserving, in an unbroken chain and in proper sequence, all records of incidents through which the respective bodies have passed. Thus, the physical seed atom, which is located in the heart, preserves a record of all the incidents of physical life. The vital seed atom, in the solar plexus, preserves the records of all uses made of the vital energies. The astral seed atom, in the liver, keeps an unbroken history of all expressions of feeling and emotion, while the mental seed atom, in the brain, keeps tab on our thoughts and preserves them within its own subtle substance, whence any information can be brought to light again when it is necessary. As man's bodies are built around these seed atoms, these records are carried from life to life, and the sum total or balance is carried forward in each of these seed atoms and molds the new physical form or astral form into a vehicle expressing the debits and credits brought forward in the seed atoms. For example, the monk in his cell spent years illuminating an ancient vellum. Month after month he labored, never stirring from his rough oak stool. His mind and soul were glorified, but he neglected his physical body. He forgot to exercise it and to strengthen its parts and members. This neglect was recorded in the seed atom, and future bodies built around the atom would express the neglect which the memory of the body centers preserved. In this way, a mystic bookkeeping system preserves the records of debits and credits and implants upon the center of each of the bodies the records of the activities of its respective forms. The totals are carried forward so that man's physical body, today, in its perfections and imperfections, bears witness to the records of previous incidents recorded in the seed atoms. The same is true of his mental body. And as each preserves its own records and grows through the activity of its own particular form, we can understand why some people have a strong mental nature and a weak physical nature. This inequality of function proves that at some time undue emphasis was laid upon the mental nature and the physical was neglected. We have told you already that the grand man, the spirit of our solar system, has 7 bodies, which are called the planes of nature. His physical body is called the physical plane, his vital body is called the etheric plane, his astral body is called the astral world, and his mental body is called the mental world. These worlds are spheres of substance, separated from each other by the rates of vibration of their tiny particles. Man, the little universe, has a body that functions in each of these 4 lower planes. The 4th or highest plane which man can function in is called the mental world. This mental world is the mind body of the solar god. Man has a limited area of mental substance, which he calls his mind. This area is a tiny bit of the great mental area, composed of all minds, which is called the mental body of God. The mystery schools, by means of 4 initiations, teach man how to function consciously in the 4 worlds of nature. In the 4th initiation, they teach him how to use the little area of consciousness, which he calls his mind, as a vehicle by which he can function consciously within the mental body of the grand man. In other words, he is taught how to wander around in the mind of God. This may seem a very peculiar idea, and yet, the system of accomplishing this has been taught by the Egyptians, Chinese Hindus, Chaldeans, and early Christians for thousands of years. Can you imagine yourself, a tiny germ of mental plasma, wandering around amid the vaulted arches and spans of universal thought, thinking with the mind of the eternal thinker, unhampered by physical brain fallacies? Let us imagine for a moment that one of the tiny cells in your physical body, by a special series of culture, was given the privilege to wander around in your mind. This little cell would live normally about 15 seconds, during which time it would be born, mature, and grow old. Therefore, its memory, allowing that it has an active one, would probably cover the span of 12 seconds, which would be equivalent to 75 or 80 years of human life. This little cell, if it could read your mind, would know things that happened years ago, while its own age is only 15 seconds. That is, of course, if it could use your memory to look them up with. Now, in comparison to the age of nature, man is 15 seconds old. With his own little mind, he can look back over 50 or 75 years, or if he be a white-crested patriarch, he might remember 85 or 90 years. But nature has been building and unfolding this planet for nearly 300 million years. There is a way by which man, the tiny microbe, may learn to remember things that had ceased to be on this little planet, eternities before he was born. The records in the mind of the planetary man, his house of memories in which the planet remembers that which happened to itself, are called in the mysteries, the Akashic records. It is by means of these records that the history of planets and worlds and races, long forgotten in the physical world, can be traced and described intelligently and with absolute knowledge of the subject on hand. These records are not engraved on stone, but are composed of the living, scintillating substances of planetary mind stuff. They are the living records of the history and unfoldment of nature. With your own mind, you can remember back through the important incidents of life. You can remember where you lived. Your joys and sorrows are stored away in the human house of memory. In the same way, the planet remembers, and in the house of planetary memory is stored a vast living library of thoughts and thought pictures, which a few, because of their special preparation and training, are permitted to read and profit by. Now, the average individual not only has his memories, but also has his ideals, and he is making at least a few plans concerning things to come. He has, in a hazy way, the outline of tomorrow. As it is true with the individual, so it is true with nature, for this far-seeing power, which molds all things, dwells not only in the past, but also in the unborn tomorrow. So, one who is able to wander about in the world of thought may pass from the house of yesterday into the creative faculties of tomorrow, and here a plan is formulating in the divine mind for things which are to come. And here the tiny figure in the midst of a magnitude of thought may see the plans for God's tomorrow, which with men may be 100 million years. So, we repeat, it is a very wonderful thing to wander around in the mind of God with those faculties awake which enable man to cognize the scheme of divinity, which to most creatures is a sealed book. To those who are interested in developing some of the latent powers of the mind, we recommend a simple form of exercise, which is more far-reaching in its effect than the student realizes. One of the great curses of our modern civilization is its thoughtlessness. Very few people really consider the importance of everyday life. They pay no attention to their own actions, failing to realize that their activity today gives birth to the reactions of tomorrow. Many of these reactions are unfortunate and undesirable, as the causes of them set in action today are thoughtless and inconsistent. Life is the great study. Books, manuscripts, and lectures drop out of sight and are of little importance when compared to the greater education which is to be gained from a careful consideration of the problems of everyday existence. In the mystery schools, there is an exercise which is called retrospection. This is performed after the closing of the work of the day, just before the student goes to sleep. It consists of devoting a few minutes to a careful analysis of the day that is done, a weighing and considering of the decisions that have been made, of the viewpoints which have been held. The exercise should consist of an unprejudiced, impersonal, constructive criticism. It should be neither a justification of mistakes, nor an unkind, destructive abuse of self. It should be impartial, philosophic, impersonal. Among people who have faced death by drowning, fire, or other sudden means, it is well known that in those few seconds when it seems that life is done, there flashes before the mind in a panorama the entire life of the individual, back to early childhood. Many people say they have lived 50 years in 5 seconds. This is, of course, the record implanted in the seed atoms, but it is interesting to note that all of the incidents are reversed. The last things that happened are the first to appear, and instead of living from childhood to maturity, the panorama begins at maturity and leads back to childhood. In the practice of retrospection, the same system is used. Instead of beginning the day in the morning, the student begins it with the evening and goes backward, incident by incident, including in his exercise even the simplest and most trivial points, such as remembering which door he went out of a room by and which shoe he took off first. These points are trivial, but in the training of the mind, the disciple is taught to realize that great things are made up of aggregations of trivia. A great many people, interested along these mystical lines, spend all their time meditating and concentrating, and neglecting their daily responsibilities. I saw in a northern newspaper an item where a woman was sentenced by the judge in a very peculiar way. The court forbade her to go to church more than 3 times a week. The idea of neglecting responsibilities in an attempt to be a great soul is erroneous and foolish, but most people can afford 10 minutes a day to be spent in the training of mind and soul. Retrospection produces 2 decided results. The first is the improvement of memory. I have a number of friends who have taken trick memory courses. The system is something like this. If you will learn 10,000 words by memory, they will help you to remember 15 that you will need every day, but as most people forget the memory system, little is attained thereby. The best way to develop memory is by learning to develop the faculty of memory. This is gained by intensifying the subconscious cognition of incidents through going over them and deeply reasoning out their value. Secondly, from this exercise, there will gradually arise greater care and greater thoughtfulness in everyday life. Consideration will precede action instead of following it, as in all too many cases. If people at the end of the day will live it over again, making right in their own hearts the wrongs of the day, determining to improve where they made mistakes, they can, to a certain degree, nullify the law of karma, or compensation as it is more commonly known. By making right their lives as they go along, individuals make it unnecessary to meet the sum of their iniquities at the end of life. In this way, 2 ends are achieved. Man's mind is a very subtle organism, far more impressionable than most people believe. What a man eats influences his thoughts. The amount of sunlight that surrounds him in the physical world has much to do with the amount of sunlight there is in his soul. If you would function properly, if you would accomplish finely organized thinking, you must eat finely organized food. Physical discomforts influence the mind. The unrest in politics, economics, and religion is due largely to the unrest in our physical systems, which results from the unnatural mode of living, to which mode the Western world is a slave. We must conserve energy in every possible way if we wish this energy to serve us to the attainment of any particular end. If you waste the life fuel thoughtlessly, you cannot have it to spend in higher mental labors. Our life energies come from our food, the air, the water, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the earth. The spleen refines this energy and distributes it as the vital substance of the body. It is this life force called Hiram Abiff in Masonry, which is, indeed, the Savior slain for the sin of the world. The spiritual growth of man is gained by the careful and wise directionalizing of this life energy, which is made to go upward through certain channels in and around the spinal column. Reaching the brain, this energy vitalizes the faculties of higher thought and superconsciousness, giving man that greater mental strength which always distinguishes the philosopher from the thoughtless. The spine has, among other uses, that of being the channel for the ascending of this spirit fire. The spine is divided horizontally into 4 divisions, 4 tiny doors that shut it off, like the joints of a bamboo reed. In the normal person, these doors are shut, thus preventing the vital energies from flowing freely between the upper and lower ends of the spine. The particular form of life substance which works through the spine is called the serpent power. It is the brazen serpent that was raised by Moses in the wilderness, and its symbol is the serpent scepter of the mysteries. The disciple is taught the processes by means of which this serpent is awakened from its sleep in the cave and is caused to crawl up the spinal cord as a ball of fire. This can be felt by the disciple as a decided warmth, sometimes to a degree of serious discomfort. As this fire passes up the spine, it burns away the gates which close the segments and form protections against the devitalization of the mental energies. In the disciple, this energy can be seen ascending the spine with a glow of light, which finally protrudes from the crown of the head in the form of a long pencil-like shaft. At last this fire, burning through the 4th gate, enters the brain itself as a consuming flame. Here, it either coalesces with the higher mental faculties if they have been trained to receive it, or else it burns out the entire brain, leaving only spiritual ash and resulting in the complete mental breakdown of the disciple. The worst part of this is that there is no cure known for that particular type of breakdown. That which has been completely destroyed cannot be rebuilt. In the ages that have passed, man was androgynous. He reproduced his species by cell fission. He broke into parts, and each of these grew to the proportion of the original unit. Slowly, he developed his present human form, and even then he produced his kind out of himself. Both poles of the creative circuit met in the generative system, and the new form was born there between the poles. It was Lucifer who turned one end of this creative force upward to create a mind. With this came responsibility, and by means of this new power which made him like a god, man sent sin and death out into his world. Man was no longer a complete self-creating unit, for now only one pole was left in the generative system. This was accomplished by turning alternate poles into the brain. In some, the positive pole was turned upward and the negative downward. In others, the negative pole was turned upward and the positive pole was turned downward. In this way, male and female were created in the nature of the personality. The mystery schools teach that man must raise the second pole of life circuit from the generative to join the part that has already been raised. When this is accomplished, man will be again a complete self-creative unit, and no longer through the lower animal centers but through the larynx and a group of new organs, which are even now forming in the throat. This is what is meant by the statement that man shall create by the spoken word. The knowledge of this was concealed under the symbol of the serpent, and those who raised the brazen serpent in the wilderness were given immortal life. Let us now go back to the subject discussed in the 2nd paragraph of this chapter. The goddess Kundalini twists her way to the brain as the result of certain forms of concentration, but woe to the student who does not first prepare himself for her coming. He must purify his body from all gross elements. He must cleanse his mind of all impure thoughts. He must be incapable of hate. He must be balanced, consistent, and regenerated in mind and body before he allows Kundalini to rise. The laws of nature must be obeyed before the disciple can safely awaken any spiritual faculty. If man's nature has reached a certain degree of purification, the spinal fire completes his understanding. Before he is given the great secrets, every disciple must take the vow of celibacy. This is not merely to separate the individual from the world, but it is the result of certain changes that are taking place in the candidate. It is very common to find that children of great intellectual souls are deformed mentally or physically. This is because all the vital energies of the parent were turned to intellectual pursuits. It would be both unwise and impracticable to make all the world celibates. In fact, many who are trying would be better off if they would live normal and simple lives. But when the disciple starts to cultivate these mystic powers, he is no longer normal in the accepted sense of the word. He is in the world, but he is no longer of it. Woe to him if he tries to return to the materiality he has left behind. By God, we here mean a grouping of all the superphysical powers of nature. There are other dimensions beyond the 4th, but they are out of our area of understanding. The 4th dimension measures the relationship of form to its own source of life. The thing traveling towards the source of itself must go along a 4th dimensional line, the dot retiring into the center of itself. The relationship between heaven and earth does away with the relationships and dimensions which men have established to measure the material universe. Heaven is not in any particular locality in relationship to the physical world. In the East, the nirvanic plane is recognized as the outer sheath of a planetary system. It is the link that connects the planets one with the other, and also a link between the planets and the sun. Those who reach the end of their planetary incarnations rest in nirvana until the dissolution of the planet at the end of the day of manifestation. In principle, all things are one, but they are divided from each other by the walls of personality. When the wall of personality is dissolved, the individual again becomes part of everything. In entering nirvana, the soul steps out of its own personality and becomes part of the personality of everything. The qualities that it evolved are then urges toward accomplishment in the nature of all creatures having a nirvanic body. The one who enters nirvana is still conscious, still an individuality, in the same way that God is an individual. His spirit is broken up to become the spirits of all the living things in his universe, but still he is one, and in a lesser way, in nirvana, the consciousness of the great initiate is spread all through the nirvanic plane where it manifests as spiritual urges in the souls of countless creatures, yet it is still conscious. But instead of having a body as we see it, his body is all bodies together, for the liberated one continues his progress and growth in the hearts and souls of his fellow creatures. A soul about to retire from the wheel of birth and death comes one last time as a world savior and preaches his great sermon, telling the physical world the sum of all the wisdom he gained in reaching that exalted position. This is his swan song. He then retires into the soul of all things. He can never come again, except through the souls and actions of his disciples. The experience that this one gained in his pilgrimage is broken up and fed to the ignorant and possessionless. The soul retires behind the veil of Maya. It is possible for one of the higher teachers to connect his own mind to that of his student so that the latter will think with the mind of the teacher and not with his own mind. The student will actually do his own thinking, but he will have the mental power of the master at his disposal. The result is that he will transcend himself for a period of time without, in many cases, understanding where his knowledge comes from. As an example, let us suppose that the disciple, in order to understand certain points he is studying, when the time comes, he asks the help of his teacher, and a second later, he feels himself hurtling through space. A few seconds later, he is walking around amid the craters and caverns of this seemingly dead world. He investigates the things he came to study and then wills that he return to Earth. He is again picked up and whirled through space. As things clear around him, he is sitting in his physical home once more. If anyone has been watching him, he will say that the student has just awakened from a short nap, for in all probability, he has made all his investigations in a few minutes of Earth time. The disciple will feel that he has been to the moon, but if he will think a minute, he will realize the impossibility of such a thing, as it requires a much higher degree of attainment than he possesses to accomplish such a feat. What really happened was this: the master has, in his higher initiation, actually visited the moon. He, therefore, knows exactly what the surface of it resembles. He built a thought form in his own mental body, and the disciple wandered around in the thought form of his master. This is the system always used when it is necessary to instruct a student in any subject when he has not reached the degree of unfoldment necessary to study it himself. It is very wonderful how real these thought forms can be made by these master instructors of human destiny. All accepted disciples are given their higher instructions in the astral world. Here they wander with their masters, studying the mysteries of the invisible nature of things. There are also in the invisible worlds races of creatures that never come into the physical world at all. Some of them are much higher than the human race. This means that they can function in spheres of consciousness that the human race cannot hope to attain in many life waves. But by means of these thought forms, the higher masters are permitted to glimpse through the minds of others the mysteries that stretch without end beyond the range of comprehension. In the invisible worlds, people do not converse with words but with thought forms. You hear words in your brain, but no words are spoken. In this way, differences in language are done away with, and each can understand the thought waves sent out by the one conversing with him. Symbolism is the universal language of the invisible worlds, and it will someday be a very important form of understanding in the physical, but that day is still some way off. This method of thinking with the mind of the teacher is not mediumship, for the student is neither hypnotized nor possessed. His consciousness is not interfered with, but he is linked up with a great source of supply, and for a time he borrows the memory of a person further advanced than himself. This practice is never done, however, without the personal supervision of the master, who is permitted because of his greater understanding to do things that the lower disciples are forbidden to attempt alone. This chapter is devoted to a study in the unfolding of universal consciousness as it takes place in the cosmic system. We begin by taking an acorn and planting it in space. It grows and becomes a great tree, but the tree is only the expression of the germ of life that was in the acorn. Every leaf and branch of the tree was in the acorn. The process of growth merely manifested the powers of the germ by clothing those powers in substance borrowed from the earth about the seed. The spirit of the tree does not actually grow, but as its manifestations increase, it builds an ever-growing form to express them. Now this tree reaches maturity and is itself covered with acorns, each the size of the original one. But all these seeds were also in the germ of the first acorn, or they could not have come into form. Each of these also blossoms forth into a tree, and these again are covered with their seeds, but even these distant acorns are found in the germ of the first acorn that was ever planted. But if the germ of the first acorn were to die, all would be dead, for the one germ lives in all parts of itself. Man must be taught to recognize this unity, which is within and behind the diversity. We know that the universe began as a tiny germ on the surface of space. Like the acorn, it sprouted, and becoming a tree, dropped its own seeds onto the ground about it. These sprouted as worlds and solar systems, but still the power of the stupendous all is founded in the tiny germ, and that germ is all there is or shall be, for all differentiation is merely an objectifying of the powers that existed in the first monad. When the day of activity is done, the first germ is withdrawn, and the entire massive, complex cosmos dies for want of it. The growth of the germ is the result of the growth that is ever taking place within it. No matter how many parts are formed, the germ is always a unit, but it is an ever-increasing unit. Man must learn to play his part in this great unfolding germ. He does his best when he realizes his place as one of the many acorns growing on the tree of the primitive seed. The swelling of the lotus bud from within outward is used to symbolize the unfoldment of man. The growth of man must all take place within his consciousness, for in spite of the parts into which his personality is broken, he must realize that all of these broken parts are enclosed within the primitive germ of his spirit, in the same way that all living and growing things are enclosed within the germ acorn of the cosmic one, the one who is the overbrooding sum of all activity and consciousness in the universe. We know that every race has a race spirit. He is called the Manu. He incarnates at the beginning of a race and places his seed in the bodies of the progenitors of the race. From this seed, the race of millions of people is born into objective manifestation, but they are all part of the one race spirit who controls them by means of the seed of life, which seed is within all who come into the race. When the work of the race is done, he withdraws the seed, and the result is the extermination of that people, as thereby they lose the power to reproduce their kind. Animals and races become extinct because the seed of the race intelligence is withdrawn. But whether you view the race as a unit or look upon it with its millions of parts, it is still one little germ of life unfolding its latent possibilities into dynamic powers within the aura of its own unity. The high priest communing in the Holy of Holies with the God who appeared between the wings of the cherubim, and the human consciousness entering into the silence of its holy place to learn wisdom at the feet of its supreme anthropos are identical. We may say, in order to make it as simple as possible, that man's spirit is twofold. His lower nature is ruled over by the Lord of the world, and his invisible spiritual nature is ruled over by the Lord of life. In the East, the disciples at the feet of their masters are pictured much smaller than their teachers in order to show their inferiority. We are told that at a certain sacred spot where the holy gather, disciples come to hear the lost word. The priest comes out onto the porch of the temple, and the multitudes begin to sing. While they are chanting, he pronounces the word, but the people cannot hear because of their own singing. At the outer edge of the throng sit the disciples in meditation. They are expected to control their minds so that they can blot out entirely the song of the crowd, and hear above it the sacred word as it is uttered by the high priest. There is a very dangerous doctrine being taught at the present time about going into the silence. The idea of making the mind a blank and waiting for something to turn up is most pernicious and is certainly conceived of perdition. People who spend their time trying to make their minds blank will sometime achieve the result in full. The mind will become absolutely null and void, but the result will be idiocy and not illumination. To enter the silence does not mean to make the mind a blank. It means that the Lord of the world, the human spirit of man, enters into the presence of the greater one, the spirit superior within himself. In the ancient mysteries, the high priest took off his garments of glory and entered the presence of the Lord unclothed, for he could take none of the things of the lower world into the presence of the higher one. So, man entering into the presence of himself may take nothing with him but his humility. No hopes, desires, notions, thoughts, or selfish whims may enter here, but as the son that cometh into the presence of a father, as a slave in the presence of his master, the personal eye waits for the words of wisdom that drop like pearls from the lotus lips of the indigo Lord of the invisible world. Man, in his daily life, does not recognize his divinity, nor does he understand the magnitude of his position. But when man has stood alone in eternity with himself, with only chaos about him, time, space, eternity, and distance absorbed into himself, and his true divinity towering over him in splendor inconceivable, he returns to his daily labor with a very different viewpoint upon this thing called life. Such a one no longer lives to accumulate selfishly and destructively, or to hoard up the things of this world. Such a one has learned to realize that the salvation of his soul through perfect obedience to the will of nature is vastly more important than the attainment of any material goal. He also realizes that when he unfolds his own nature by right thinking, right living, and right aspiring, he is building a soul temple within which sometime the shining stranger will take up its dwelling place. But man has not yet finished the temple. He has not yet earned the right to know his own spiritual nature. So now, like the high priest of old, he comes in the silence to the foot of the altar to be bathed for a moment in the glory, and then go forth again strengthened for the true labor which will sometime unite him forever with the glory of the Lord. Today, there is a great lack of reverence for divine things. The most beautiful and sacred things are spattered with the mud of mental and physical sordidness. The spiritual powers of nature are juggled with to buy or sell real estate or canvas waffle irons through a neighborhood. One of the things that a student must remember is that truth is a sensitive thing. No one ever found it who did not approach its mystery with unselfishness and reverence. Man's faculties are always budding and unfolding like flowers. Every day, a new eye opens and gives the soul a new window through which to gaze at the world and study its ever-complicating civilization. The mind is the finest and most accurate of man's tools, and if he will learn how to use and control it, he can gain through its faculties a knowledge of the visible worlds and also of a great part of the invisible world. But the mind must be governed and taught how to think, and this is best accomplished by daily exercise. If you will approach the mystery of understanding with a clean heart and an open mind, you will ultimately be accepted into the knowledge of the mystery. You will find the gates of brass will swing open, and you will be admitted into the University of Understanding.